On that story, we're joined by reporter Ntakwane, who is in Botswana for us. Ntakwane, a very good afternoon to you. What a moving send-off for the late son of Africa as he was hailed. How did his funeral go?
Well, as you heard there, Alicia, quite mixed emotions from all the speakers, really, saying that this is a celebration of a great man, but also the send-off is quite sad, because it means that we will never get the good that he seemed to have exemplified throughout his life, for either for Botswana, for Southern Africa, and even for Africa. Now, his words were repeated also, or rather, former President Mbeki's words were repeated by President Mugabe of Zimbabwe, who said that he had never had such a close friend as Masire, saying that the work that he did, echoing Mbeki's words in terms of helping other Southern Africans in their struggles for freedom, for independence, cannot be overemphasized. And also speaking at that funeral, the president of Botswana, that is Ian Khama, whose father was the first president who preceded Masire, also saying that his wife was his biggest partner and that the two made a formidable team. So quite a moving send-off, as you said, Alicia.
Ntakwane, now some good news coming out of that, if we can call it that, as of course the incumbent president, Ian Khama, said that they are actually considering naming some locations after the late Ketumile Masire. What can you tell us about those news?
Well, he says that it is not a consideration, it's something that has to happen. But some speakers had said they were surprised that it hadn't happened while Masire was still alive. But he says, well, in Botswana it is tradition that places or roads or monuments, whatever it is that is done in remembrance of previous leaders, can only be done after they have passed on. And he says that now that Masire has passed on, Cabinet will definitely sit and decide what to be named after him and how to remember him. Alicia?
And just to quickly wrap up then, Ntakwane, what were the highlights of this funeral program? I mean, a myriad of great speakers, leaders, former heads of state, sitting heads of states. Talk to us about what was the single message that resonated with all the speakers at the funeral.
I think the first thing that we have to look at, Alicia, is if you look at who came to this funeral, it says a lot.
Absolutely.
You're looking at President Mugabe from Zimbabwe, you're looking at King Letsie from Lesotho, you're looking at former presidents of Zambia, 2 from Namibia, 1 from Tanzania, 1 from Zambia. You're looking at the Deputy President of South Africa. You're looking at the former President of South Africa. You're looking at the newly appointed Deputy Prime Minister of Lesotho, and that is Munyane Moleleki. And Moleleki, who comes from one of the movements that was involved in Lesotho in the attainment of freedom for that country, would have probably ended up in Botswana at some point in his life. So all of these people, first of all, very symbolic in terms of how they consider the role that Masire played. But in terms of their messages, just one, a patriot of Africa, a man who is probably understated in the amount of work and the amount of spirit that he generated on the continent.
Ntakwane, thank you so much for that wrap. That is our report on the line to us from Gaborone in Botswana. Ntakwane, wrapping up the funeral proceedings of the late former President Ketumile Masire, who was buried a short while ago out in the capital.